Paul, King Tut's stolen some ancient scarabs.
Scarabs?
It's a kind of beetle.
Holy John, Paul, George, and Ringo, Tim. Where could he have gone with them?
Where else would you take scarabs? To the Scarabean.
Holy terrible entomological puns!
To the bat poles! Welcome to the Bat Poles, where we want to see the battle of the mascots. Apricot the pink dog versus Aunt Hilda's pet Mortimer.
Or maybe Streaky the super cat, maybe?
Or Orangey.
Yes, there we go.
This is Tim in Tokyo with my brother Paul in Hanover, New Hampshire.
That's where I am, and that's who I am.
Our theme version this time is called, on YouTube, 1960s Batman theme Epic Version, which is performed by L'Orchestra Cinématique, who their About page says that they are a London-based epic music trio. So everything that all their videos are epic versions of various pieces of music, from Lord of the Rings, from Star Wars, from various Batman and Spider-Man movies, Disney movies. They're all epic versions. I guess they just mean dramatic.
Well, yeah, I wasn't sure whether they meant that these were all pieces of music or themes from epic television shows and films, or because they thought that what they were doing was epic. But in some cases, I agree with neither of those interpretations of the term. It was okay, but
it's very dramatic. In fact, it's
very
epic.
Dramatic. Calling it epic raises my expectations to a degree that I think I liked this less than I would have otherwise. or maybe it lowers my expectations so that I can't help but think of it as less than epic. But it was interesting. It was interesting.
Yeah, it's like if Hefty wrote the Batman theme for a dark 21st century Batman movie.
Right. Yes. Oh, if only we had more dark 20th century epic Batman movies, or 21st century. Hey, did you ever see the Robert Pattinson Batman?
Nope.
Not as awful as I expected, and I didn't look at my watch nearly as many times as I thought I would, because it does run 7.5 hours.
Yeah, Gone with the Wind is a film short in comparison.
That's right. It's the cartoon reel before the feature.
And it might even be as long as our Victor Buono Tut 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 episode.
Which we should have serialized if we'd had our druthers.
All right, so this time we're going through the first draft of the script for A Piece of the Action, Batman Satisfaction. It's dated January 19th, 1967, and of course it was broadcast February 22nd and 23rd of 67. So about 5 weeks, 5 weeks before it was broadcast. So yeah, the turnaround was pretty fast, right? Because somebody needed to rewrite this, and then film the whole thing and edit it and get it to the network, and it was broadcast on the 22nd of February. So
I've never done any research on that issue, how frequently scripts were turned around that quickly on television, but I'll bet it was pretty frequent. It might have been less frequent for Batman than other sitcoms, if we want to call this a sitcom, because it was actually something that was filmed, as in, basically an hour show minus ads. Mm-hmm. Yeah, with the cliffhanger, of course. So there were always 2 episodes to be written, or just one large episode that, had a big cut in the middle.
Yeah, I would like to compare to something like Get Smart that was just 30 minutes a week and probably didn't have to work quite as hard.
Right. But this is pretty fast, and I think television has always been just about that fast until the Netflix era. Now, these shows get pre-planned like 3 years in advance, and huge stars are contracted to maybe co-produce them as well as star in them. It doesn't happen quite as quickly as it used to.
Now, of course, this is written by Charles Hoffman, and I was trying to remember, I didn't actually go back and look, but if we'd ever looked at a Hoffman script before. Well, Mad Hatter. Yeah, we looked at the first Mad Hatter. That was him.
Sure.
But it made me kind of notice something that I'll get to later. It's kind of a minor thing. But, let's go ahead and jump into this. So the first thing I noticed was that the opening scene where Hornet and Kato appear at the Pink Chip Stamps, has to be Stamps factory. So the time of day has changed. In the script, it's dawn. As broadcast, it's midnight, which I think makes more sense for Hornet's MO to be there at midnight rather than at the break of dawn.
Of course. But I wonder if that's the reason why it was changed. I suppose it probably was. But Hoffman still gets to make his, rosy-fingered dawn joke later in the episode, in the filmed version.
What does that mean, rosy-fingered dawn?
Oh, it's from the Odyssey, I believe. It's one of Homer's repeated like rhetorical lines. He like most oral poets, I guess, at that time. At least that's what they tell me. Poets had just certain kind of like rote set pieces they would use for describing evening and morning and different times of day. And so rosy-fingered dawn was pretty much a cliche, not just of Homer's, but of other poets who told long oral poetic narratives.
I see, okay. The other thing I was wondering, so of course Hoffman was the script editor at this point, seasons 2 and 3, and so who is making the changes? Is he making these changes to his own script, or did someone else point out these things, like maybe Horowitz?
Yeah, that occurred to me too, and it's interesting that this script doesn't have any markings of any kind on it, because we're used to seeing markings on these scripts, usually not usually Dozier's, I guess usually Horowitz's. So who knows, what the provenance of this script was, but it grabbed my attention that nobody seems to have gone through it, which made me wonder if this was Hoffman's copy.
Yeah, maybe. I don't know. Yeah, it's surprising, because usually we've seen Howie Horowitz's writing on these, and it occurs to me that another thing we will miss High C for is that he could identify the handwriting better. And like one time we said, oh, this Dozier wrote this, and he said, well, no, actually that looks like Horowitz's handwriting. Like, oh, okay.
Yes, that level of expertise is something I think we can only aspire to.
Yeah, we have to become bat handwriting experts. As happens many times in the script, the opening scene is completely rewritten, but the meaning is pretty much the same. It's just a lot of the wording is changed. Also, as written, Green Hornet and Kato just leave, where as shot, they gas Gum and his crew. So it's a lot more impact to the scene than just, okay, see ya.
Right. It's hard to understand. I mean, that made me suspect that the scene was really just meant, there needed to be a scene in which Gum and the Green Hornet and Kato actually met for other purposes of the story, later on down the line. So just to have them like run into each other basically, or have, Green Hornet and Kato just show up at the stamps factory, excuse me, and show themselves and then walk out and, have Kato say, well, that was uneventful, or, that didn't accomplish much.
As written, he said that didn't accomplish much. As shot, he said, why leave? We had them reeling. Mm-hmm. So again, it's kind of the same thing.
Sure, except as you say, there's a lot more impact and viewer interest in having, people get their jaws smacked around a little bit first.
Yeah, well, and it's a very good question that the viewer is probably asking, why leave? Well, because if they don't, then Batman doesn't get a chance to do anything.
That's right.
The show will be over in the first 5 minutes.
Yes. It's quiet, Kato. We need to meet Colonel Gum so that he can recognize us later. Okay. Or prepare for us, I suppose.
Yeah, then the rosy-fingered morn and Pinky. So, as written, her scene coming in is just, moments later. And she says, what was that? What was all that about, Colonel Gum? Where, as shot, she has seen Hornet and Kato entering from her apartment window, and she says, who were your two visitors last night?
Mm-hmm. Well, here she does say, I saw them arrive from my apartment window on page 4.
Oh, yeah, I guess she does say that. But, yeah, of course, I guess the main thing has changed is just the time of day again. Who were your visitors last night?
Right.
Pinky calls Gordon, of course. Now, as written, Gordon is listening to her and repeating everything she says. So, of course, Miss Pinkston, can you describe the interlopers? Pauses, reacts with frown. A big black limousine? Frown deepens. The driver was wearing a double-breasted black jacket, a black mask, and a black cap? Frown increases. And the man who got out back had a green topcoat with a velvet collar? Concerned glance at Chief O'Hara. A green mask and a green hat? Where, as broadcast, it's just, what? What?
Hello, Miss Pinkston. What can I do for you?
Two strange men invaded my factory last night, Commissioner. My foreman threw them out, but I am running a legitimate business here, and I may need your help.
Well, of course. Can you describe the interlopers? What? What?
Yeah, well, that seems a little more realistic than just barking everything back at her that she's just said. It's, great for expository, but terrible for realism.
Well, and it just, you kind of wording the reader or the viewer to death there, where what kind of, draws interest. What?
Right, yeah.
What is
suspense. It's time for the bat spin and the bat theme.
Right. I was a little surprised, Dozier has the line about the pink factory with a green intruder and a brick-colored stately Wayne Manor, but the red bat phone isn't, that part of the line is missing here. That was added later.
That feels like a missed opportunity on the part of the script. I'm glad that it was picked up. Maybe by Hoffman himself in the story editing phase.
While from a pink factory with a green intruder, we go to brick-colored stately Wayne Manor and a red bat phone.
And at Wayne Manor, we start out with Bruce on the phone with Pinky making the lunch date. That all is gone. Instead, at the end of the scene, Aunt Harriet says, Bruce, don't forget you have a luncheon date with that sweet Miss Pinkston. And so that's a lot more economical. Just one line and it's established, and we don't need a whole 3/4 of a page to establish the date.
Well, speaking of economy, I'm happy that in the final as shot script that the fact that Gum in the original script is bugging Pinky's office was just dropped, because it doesn't really make any difference, to what Gum knows, and he can always say later if he needed to, I bugged your apartment and found out X, Y, and Z. But instead, in the original on page 7 and elsewhere in the script, we have, Gum on another phone by which he is obviously, quote, bugging at, quote, Pinky's apartment, and over which we hear. So that's just, by eliminating the bug, we just, the producers just have fewer inserts of Gum listening to a telephone to, to film and plug in as we go. It's just a kind of unnecessary plot bit, I think.
Mm-hmm. So, commercial break, and I noticed that they kept changing the originally written lunch date to luncheon date. Maybe it sounds more sophisticated because it's Pinky and it's at a high-class place.
Mm-hmm. Well, it's Pinky and it's millionaire Bruce Wayne and newspaper editor. I almost called him publisher. I almost called him Britt Hume. Yes, the Green Hornet runs Fox News.
Yeah, and so, again, on 11 and 12, we have Gum listening to a phone conversation between, what is he doing here? This is not at the restaurant yet. This is, Britt's in his hotel, and she's at her place, and she's, so talking to Britt, and I guess that does actually happen on screen, but there's no... Gum's not involved in the scene.
Right. And, Gum does show up at the luncheon in disguise, but his part there is cut down as well.
Yes. We'll get
he doesn't
to
have a chance to order the alphabet, have the pre-discussion of ordering the alphabet soup with the maitre d' or the server before he finally says he'll take his business elsewhere. Yeah, so I kind of liked it better that way, in comparing the two, that we don't know how Gum got the information of where Pinky was going to be, because it makes him seem a little more sinister, which, when you've got Carmel playing the role, you need to do everything you can to make him seem sinister, to make him seem like a competent criminal, I guess. Mm-hmm. Sorry, I'm not prejudiced against, Mr. Carmel, really. I just don't like him. I don't find him funny. I don't find the overacting and the blustering stuff all that funny. There are other actors who do the kind of fake British accent bluster much better. But, that's just sometimes you work with who you've got.
And then on page 13, there's a whole conversation between Gum and Canceled that is indeed canceled about counterfeit Dutch stamp design and about alphabet soup and whatever. So that's all gone.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it didn't contribute to getting from point A to point B in the script.
On page 12, after Britt and Pinky talk on the phone, Cato says, "You can't win them all," and Britt's line as written is, "Maybe not, Cato, but we must win the battle of the pink chimp right. The pink chip stamps factory, which is changed to a line that gives us more information. Ever since Bruce and I were kids, we've been rivals in one way or another."
Yeah.
So it's not just a bravado line, it's a background line.
Right. Yeah, and it also gives more motivation to the kind of sparring that Bruce and Britt do at various points in the show. And also, we don't then move to that very interesting line that Batwing Hornet also pointed out in his post to the 66 message board.
He says Gum was a far superior character in this draft, as no actor had been cast for the part, obviously. So his personality has no, shall we say, Carmelisms, but is a bit more dangerous. Sounds strange if all we can think of is Carmel, but the first draft Gum also had no issues killing, as seen in his tearing up the stamps of Green Hornet and Cato, thinking it was the duo.
Right. But Batwing Hornet says the first draft suggests that Hoffman had more interesting ideas that were often discarded by or at the hands of higher-ups the time it was time to roll the cameras. A good example is the way Cato kind of called out Green Hornet for being protective over his alter ego, and this is from a bit later in the script. Cato, something bothering you, Mr. Reed? You seemed so quiet all afternoon. Britt, yes, Cato, something's bothering me. The strange, defensive way Bruce Wayne spoke this morning in the living room at Wayne Manor. Cato, defensive? Britt nods. About Batman. Cato smiles. You'd be defensive about the Green Hornet, Mr. Reed. Britt, that's just what I mean, Cato. Batwing Hornet comments, to this day, it is rare to have filmed superheroes psychoanalyzed in that way, especially by their younger, less experienced junior partners, quote unquote. And I think what they've also avoided by changing that out and having there be a focus on the rivalry between Bruce and Britt earlier on, that way the script can avoid getting too close to the notion that Bruce and Britt each suspect the other of being the costumed, crime fighter on the other side, or in the case of Green Hornet, they think he's the costumed criminal. So there's none of the sort of creeping toward the possibility that Britt and Bruce suspect each other of wearing costumes and going out at night in their underwear. But instead, the motivation for the sparring is the childhood rivalry between these two characters.
Yeah, well, yeah, we'll get to that later, but
yeah, you can just drop that part in later if you'd like. But I wanted to make sure I got it out before too much more time elapses.
Hello, I'm Ken Holzhauser, and if you're looking for something new in comic books, may I recommend my newest comic, The Quick and the Dad, a love letter to the DC, Marvel, Archie, and Harvey comics of my youth. This comic has everything. It has spaceships, dad jokes, alien invasions, time travel, supervillains, and so many bad puns. Hopefully you'll like it. It's the cutest comic you've never heard of, and it's available today in print and digital from indieplanet.com. That's The Quick and the Dad. Join that other dynamic duo, won't you?
Hi, I'm Sophie, and I haven't seen a lot of movies.
Hi, I'm Paul, and I'm here to help with that.
And we are SP Film Viewers.
Each week, we take a deep dive into films that Sophie is seeing for the first time, some of which are deemed classics, some of which are my favourites, and some are just to try and get a reaction from her.
We don't take ourselves too seriously, but we have a lot of fun talking about what we've watched.
And we hope you have fun listening to our light-hearted thoughts and ramblings on this cinematic journey.
So tune in every Thursday on Apple Podcast, Spotify, and wherever you get your podcasts from.
Oh. Grammar School Department. Page 14, in a section that's cut, Batman says infer when he means imply.
Yes. Yeah, although it kind of could go either way, that he infers there might be something more to the piece of the action at the Pink Chip Stamps Factory line that they've all sort of been saying and kind of attributing to Green Hornet, even though they'd never heard him say it. And of course he did say it. Probably because they all want to say the name of the script as many times as possible.
Yeah, it's in there several times.
Yeah, exactly. You're right about that. I also don't quite understand this bit that also got cut from the rest of... I mean, that whole scene got cut, I guess. Well, not the whole scene, but just the opening, the way it opens on 14. A piece of the action, Batman quietly, a piece of the action at the Pink Chip Stamps Factory? Chief O'Hara, does seem strange, doesn't it? Batman, not exactly. Robin looks at him wisely. Holy innuendo, Batman. The innuendo line confuses me a little because I tend to think of innuendo. I immediately think of, sexual innuendo of some kind. So, getting a piece of the action at the Pink Chip Stamps Factory. Pink. I've got AC/DC songs running through my head. Oh, no. Like Sink the Pink, for example, where pink can only mean one thing, and that, when it's coming out of Brian Johnson's mouth. So yeah, I was a little surprised at the using the term Robin using innuendo there to describe what Batman has just said. But I suppose the innuendo is something about what Robin is detecting is some reference to the fact that he already suspects, perhaps, the Pink Chip Stamps Factory of producing counterfeit collector's stamps.
Yeah, I think so. All this cut section gets into that counterfeit rare stamps. I've heard for some time the rare stamp market was being flooded with fake issues, selling at fabulous prices. O'Hara, and you think Miss Pinkston? Batman stops him quickly. I didn't say that, Chief O'Hara, but obviously the Green Hornet isn't after trading stamps, and by reputation we know he's very astute. And then it picks up with what's broadcast. Robin saying there must be something else at the pink chip stamps factory he was looking for.
I am so in love with calling it the Pink Chimp Stamps Factory. It's like there's a pink poodle named Apricot in this show. Why not have a...
Well, yeah, actually, the script says poodle, but as broadcast, it's Maltese.
It's a Maltese,
and yeah, that's definitely not a poodle on the screen.
No, certainly not. It looks sort of like a very angry mink that has been dyed a different color than its natural fur. Yeah, I'm kind of sorry that this part of the scene has been chopped, because just kind of connecting up things a little more literally and concretely, between the Pink Chip, I just said it again, the Pink Chip Stamps Factory and the possibility of counterfeiting that Bruce has already discovered in the opening, when he sees that one of his, prize stamps may actually be a phony. But, maybe it is innuendo. Maybe, it does, the theme does show up or does come to us, still as kind of by attrition over the course of the two episodes.
Britt and Batman and Robin are in Gordon's office. O'Hara, as written, says, "Between us girls." It's changed to "between us boys," which is less sexist but more puzzling. Who says "between us boys"?
Well, yes, and also less gay, less queer sounding. It's so campy.
Yeah.
Between us girls, it's really my jaw kind of dropped when I read that. Did Hoffman really think that was going to stay? I mean, the kids at the very least would just be absolutely puzzled. It's like, what? Mommy. Is Chief O'Hara just like J. Edgar Hoover? Does he wear women's underpants too?
And Batman on page 17 has a line, "Legends are frequently overrated and often short-lived, Mr. Reed." And it's changed to "Legends are sometimes overrated, Mr. Reed." And then O'Hara, as written, says, "'Twill be the Green Hornet who's short-lived, Batman, if he tangles with you and Robin," which makes perfect sense, but it kind of implies that the Batman and Robin are going to kill the Green Hornet and Kato. So that, the short-lived part is completely gone now, and so he says overrated, the Green Hornet who's overrated, but that doesn't quite make sense. So he'll be overrated because he met Batman and Robin?
Okay, yeah, you're right. But it goes by so quickly that we've...
Right. You get the meaning, but...
Right, but I had even forgotten what had been said before, to kind of try to line up the overrated with, whatever, Batman was going to have over Green Hornet in the previous couple of sentences. It had already just whizzed past me.
Strangest thing on page 19, did you notice reprint and canceled swapped lines?
No, I didn't notice
and
that.
And I can't imagine why that would be, but the lines stay right where they are, but who speaks them changes. Gum is talking to reprint first, where reprint says that's because the overprint machine's on the blink, boss. And then canceled later says, "How short, Colonel Gum?"
Well, if they weren't both in the same shot, which I seem to remember they were. I'm not sure about that. But it could be that one was on set and what the other wasn't, or one of the two was blowing his own line, and so they just switched them out just to keep things moving.
So there's supposed to be a warning bell for when Pinky is coming, and later they've added the detail that she's coming down her private stairway, and that sets off the alarm. So, but the alarm as broadcast is a doorbell. Bing bong.
Whoops. There comes the pink prima donna down her private stairway. Look busy and honest.
Doesn't quite work as a warning.
No. Although it would keep Miss Pinkston less suspicious, I suppose, than if she heard Miss Pinkston, you know, some kind of klaxon or something. But yes, it does sound as though the Avon lady has just shown up at the pink chimp, shall we say.
On page 22, of course, the Bat computer fails to figure out dual identities. Then there's a whole section that's cut where they ask it to locate Black Beauty. Mm-hmm. And it tells them the car is in a rental garage in Gotham City with a tarp over it, but can't tell them who owns it. But then after they leave, with Robin moaning about seeing his French tutor, the Bat computer belatedly spits out a card naming Renskei's rental garage as the location of the Black Beauty.
Mm-hmm. And the fact that Batman wants to find out something else, rather than where Black Beauty is being kept,
right? That's
frustrates.
In part 2.
Yeah, I mean, it becomes a running joke where Batman is kind of thwarting the desire of both Robin and the Bat computer to convince Batman that they should go like to the parking garage and find the Black Beauty.
Well, I mean, you can see the season 2 anthropomorphization of the Bat computer here.
Mm-hmm,
a lot of that is cut in the final, but you know we've seen it in a number of other places where it's like becoming a character, and like, really,
and it still survives here in the fact that they're feeding him
him
alphabet.
You called the computer him.
I did. It's it's the gray chimp. They're feeding him it. Excuse me.
It's technology.
In part 2, they feed him the I did it again. The letters from the leftover alphabet soup that Pinky has left in the bowl to send them a message. Right. Brilliantly, a little out of her pay scale, one would think from watching her in the rest of the episode. It's above her grade, but yeah. So the line has been kept when Batman says, it's they're noodles, so they're easy to digest. That was in the original as well as in the final shot version.
Although I still say it looks like he's got alphabets there because they sound kind of crunchy.
Yes, and they're big. They're big enough to recognize as letters, which, if you've ever seen pre-cooked alphabet noodles, they're tiny. I mean, really tiny.
So page 24, we're in the Camilla room, which it doesn't mention in the script, but on screen we're shown that it's in the Gotham, Hampshire hotel. And I noticed something which I think it kind of blinked by me before. So, you know how you can have music going that's supposed to be diegetic music, and you go... when you change the shot to a location that's farther away from the source of the music, then the volume suddenly drops as the shot changes.
Right.
Now, in this case, when you're looking at the hotel sign, which presumably is outside the building, the music is louder, and then suddenly when they go to the Camilla room, it's softer. So I guess the music is playing outside.
Well, sure. Back in the the 1900s, the way that the late Nickelodeon owners would get people to come in and check out their Nickelodeon was by playing really loud phonograph records just outside the door. So maybe that's what's going on here. The restaurateurs are playing really loud restaurant music, outside the front door to try to entice new customers.
I mean, it makes sense in terms of starting out with the music at a listenable volume and then cutting the volume so we can hear the actors. But
sure.
But if they had sort of faded it out gradually, it would have been clearer what they were doing. But yeah, here it's like, oh, now we're farther away from the source of the music. Okay.
Well, it seems more like non-diegetic music when it starts out that loud outdoors.
Right, yeah, it's non-diegetic outdoors, and then it's diegetic indoors. It just happens to be the same music.
Yes, I'm reminded of, Dr. Farnsworth, I think, from John Candy's character from Days of the Week on SCTV, kind of, playing along with his hands to the theme from Days of the Week as it's
William
playing.
Wainwright.
Wainwright, right, as it's, I think, playing at the wedding that it ends the whole, ends that part of the Days of the Week series.
Mm-hmm.
Da, 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 da.
So, yeah, as you mentioned earlier, there's a cut bit of the scene, at the beginning of the scene, before we see Britt and Pinky and Bruce, we see Gum in his British disguise ordering alphabet soup.
Mm-hmm.
And he wants it with no W's because they're too starchy. So there are a number of jokes like that where certain alphabet soup letters have certain qualities, allegedly.
Why is it that Gum is obsessed with letters? I mean, don't you think at the very least he should be obsessed with, like, dentine? Gum of some kind, with a name like Gum with two M's? I don't understand the connection. I understand why Riddler is obsessed with riddles, because he's the Riddler, for Pete's sake.
Yeah, well, it's kind of like, why is the puzzler interested in aviation and Shakespeare?
Indeed. But at least his shtick is kind of puzzles, isn't it? Whereas, Gum is, so obsessed with alphabet soup that, he ought to be like, I don't know, Mr. M from Alpha Time would be a better villain for him to play, perhaps.
I suppose printing and typesetting and then alphabet soup. I suppose that could have been the thought.
Well, I would prefer to be hit over the head with that at some point. Why should I exert the brain power to figure out that connection myself? I'm just jealous that I'm envious of you that you figured it out. just turning on you a little for that.
So I noticed the second lingerie model's phone number in the script consists of all 8s, but it's changed to all 5s as broadcast, presumably because 555 prefix phone numbers are reserved for fictional use.
Right. Mm-hmm.
But it's a little surprising that Hoffman apparently didn't know that when he wrote the script.
Sure. Well, that's what the legal department is for, I suppose.
Mm-hmm. Well, I'm still surprised that 8675309 made it past the lawyers, and I wonder how many people were getting crank calls back in the early 80s when the Tommy Two-Tone song came out.
Yes. Hello? I got your number on the wall.
Hi, Jenny. I want a date.
For a good time call.
Yeah, we mentioned that Gum ordering scene is cut, but then the one that stays in doesn't quite make sense. Well, let's see. This is page 29. As written, the waiter says, "Sorry, no alphabet soup without W's." As broadcast, he says, "The only alphabet soup we have is tomato, split pea, and clam chowder," which I can't really make sense of. What, are there 3 different flavors, or there's one kind of soup with all 3? But as opposed to what? What did? I have a feeling that first scene might have been shot and not used.
Maybe.
And would have set up this, but it doesn't really make much sense without the first scene.
Well, unless we infer, not imply, but infer, that an earlier conversation had taken place that we just weren't as privy to as an audience.
Right. Well, I mean, clearly he ordered, but we just didn't see it. But
sure,
we're left to wonder what it was that he actually ordered.
Sure.
I don't think I thought of this before. So Bruce and Britt go to the stamp shop, and Gum is disguised as Boris Severoff, like sever off, like cut off something. I'm not sure what. Also, his initials are BS.
Yes, that's useful. Well, there's all kinds of stuff that seems to border on the adult happening in Hoffman's script, some of which wound up in the episode as shot. Like, not only are these lingerie models throwing their phone numbers and names at Britt and Bruce,
throwing themselves at these men.
Yeah, but they're also lingerie models, right? They're not just lingerie models in the script, they're lingerie models as shot as well. I mean, they're not exactly wearing, like, teddies or anything, or, bikinis, but...
No, it's family-friendly.
But, they're still kind of sheer, and, they're making bedroom eyes while wearing bedroom clothing. So it's a little risque, I would say.
Yeah. So let's see. Bruce suggests that he wonders if Severoff sold him a fake blue boar stamp.
A flake chimp?
I don't know why I'm so tongue-tied today.
Well, you've been teaching all day, my friend.
Well, yeah, I had 6 classes today. 4 of them 7th graders.
Yes, and lessons too.
Yeah, a couple of online adult lessons. So when Gum asks, "Are you implying I'd sell you a fake issue, Mr. Wayne? You know me better than that." Bruce, as written, says, "I'm only trying to protect the value and validity of my collection." As shot, his answer is more soothing.
And what enormous perils it went through before it finally found its way to my poor establishment.
Not quite as poor as it was the day before yesterday, Mr. Severoff, when I paid a rather handsome price for the blue boar. I just hope that you were right.
Are you implying that I hoodwinked you, Mr. Wayne? That I sold you a fake?
No, of course not. But isn't it possible that you were hoodwinked?
And there's a whole section cut from this scene where Bruce introduces Britt to Severoff, and Severus tries to interest him in a most uncommon Dutch stamp, which the Dutch stamp was also cut from that other scene with Gum and his men. So, yeah, the Dutch stamp was completely on the cutting room floor.
Right. I think that just would have confused the issue since they've already got, one potentially counterfeit stamp that Bruce has found. They end up concentrating at least a little more on that. And the Dutch stamp would just complicate matters for the audience.
Gum has a phone conversation with Reprint that's rewritten because as written, Pinky can somehow overhear the other end of Reprint's phone call. Because Reprint doesn't say anything that incriminates himself. It's all Gum's lines.
Oh, yes.
But as right. Shot, Reprint mentions fake stamps. And Pinky is standing there.
I really smell trouble this time.
Too bad, boss. But you'll flip when you see my last batch of phony stamps. Not fuzz at all.
Yeah, I think the camera pans to the right to reveal that she's been there the whole time.
Yes. So, yeah, she had to have really good hearing otherwise.
Yes. What's that you say? He could have pulled a Commissioner Gordon and just repeated what Gum was saying on the other end of the line.
So on 33, we have Hornet and Kato getting ready to go out. And as shot, there's a lot added about Hornet's concerned that the duo is going to be after them and he doesn't want to hurt them. And he turns his Hornet sting to half power. Yeah, which is not in the script.
Right. He just says, I think it may come in quite handy tonight against the dynamic duo. Strange place for a double dash.
Now, outrageously, in the Stamp Factory, as written, there's no fight.
Yeah.
Like, what show are you making here?
No, there wasn't a fight in the opening scene either.
But,
it was written anyway.
Beyond the first arc or two of the series, you pretty much had to have a bat fight in every episode, other than Zelda the Great, Part 1 and Part 2, where, with High Diddle Riddle, they kept the fight till the very end, did the smack in the middle.
Right.
But then everybody freaked out, like, oh, we got to do more of this. Let's run it into the ground. Okay.
How fast and how deep?
Yeah, so as Batwing Hornet mentions, Gum tears up the Hornet and Kato stamps rather than simply, as he does as shot, thumbtack them to the wall. And I assume that this change wasn't so much making him less murderous as once you tear them up, you can't reshoot any scenes.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. And I'm sure they didn't want to make more than more than one of each of those Kato and Green Hornet stamps because they look pretty much hand produced.
Yeah. So, yeah, let's not tear them up because, then we're stuck with whatever we've shot.
Yeah, then we'd have to tape them together from the back and try to, make do as though they were still whole before they get ripped up again.
Also, the script has no undetachable glue pad. Gumm's men are just holding Batman and Robin.
Mm-hmm. And why would I just think that part of the
undetachable
as shot version is dumb. Yeah, if it's undetachable, why would even Colonel Gumm's special, detaching formula get them off of it?
They should just be stuck forever.
Yeah, maybe they should have tried flypaper instead.
Conditionally undetachable.
Right.
Now, on page 41, this is the first time I can ever remember seeing the title of Part 2 in the script. Batman Satisfaction. And
I missed that.
It made me think, well, the script editor is writing the script, and it might have been his responsibility anyway to come up with Part 2 titles.
That's a good point.
Maybe he was just taking care of it early. So between pages 42 and 46, there are several uses of French, which I'm going to butcher if I try to say them. But Batman says on the qui vive. Qui vive.
Mm-hmm.
Quivive.
Yep.
Which puzzles Gum, but Robin takes the hint that they should simultaneously break free from the henchmen. And on 46, Robin says he's glad he's being tutored in French or he wouldn't have known Batman meant on your toes.
Mm-hmm.
Which seems kind of ridiculous to me, both to a non-French-speaking audience who would also be puzzled. And, that of course, Batman isn't going to shout instructions that he thinks Robin won't understand.
Of course.
It would make more sense to me if Robin was saying, I'm glad I learned some French, if there was French coming from some other source, not from Batman.
Right. Although the French has been introduced as when Robin says, holy tete bêche. And Gum says, correction, Boy Wonder. This is on page 42. A tete bêche is a stamp printed upside down. I don't know what bêche means, but tete is head. So probably, just head down or, turned over.
Below or something.
Yeah, not that, but the French bit gets introduced there. But it's interesting that Gum doesn't know what qui vive means, but, he's a stamp guy rather than... French connoisseur of the French language. So he might certainly know phrases taken from French to discuss stamps, but he might not know any more French than that. So for him to say, what does that mean? Which, really, qui vive just means, stay alert or be on your toes.
But I think this all got cut partly because of the introduction of the glue pad, because now their henchmen weren't holding them, that they could suddenly break free from them.
Yeah.
On the qui vive. So, as far as I'm concerned, it's good riddance.
Yeah, I think so. And probably, many 8-year-olds would have just been just as grateful if they'd known it was taken out.
Now, I really liked this change on 48, where, as written, when they notice the alphabet soup, Batman and Robin, Batman says, with the J's, Q's, and Z's missing, but... As shot, he says, Robin, have you noticed? The J's, Q's, and Z's are missing. So it gives the impression of Batman as Robin's teacher in the art of detective work, but of course it's taken to a ridiculous extent.
Yes. Yeah, just, speeding past the bowl of alphabet soup, Robin happened to see that certain letters were missing.
And then also we get added... the right tool for the right job about the alphabet soup bat container. That's also a good addition.
Mm-hmm. Yes, that thermos, I'll bet every 8-year-old in the second grade was thrilled and wanted one of those thermoses themselves once they saw the huge bat thermos that Batman supposedly pulled out of his utility belt at that moment.
So, as broadcast... After that scene, we jump straight to the Batcave and Robin's attempted analysis of the alphabet soup. But the script has a 2-page scene that's cut of Gordon and O'Hara and a Sergeant Semple, where they got that name, trying to reassemble the torn-up Hornet and Cato stamps, somehow intuiting the idea that those stamps were actually Hornet and Cato.
Yes, like the flattened versions of Batman, Robin, and Batgirl in season 3.
Right, yeah, I was thinking about that too. But, I mean, I don't know how the GCPD was supposed to know that.
Mm-hmm.
Of course, it wasn't actually true, but,
Sure.
but Gum had made it appear that it was true.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I still don't understand the ultimate point of all of that. It was probably just so that Gum and his men could escape, I suppose.
Right, yeah.
Distraction.
It's not clear if Gum knew that they weren't going to be turned into stamps, or it was because the machine malfunctioned. It's vague.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
So O'Hara is concerned that Batman and Robin could also have been turned into giant postage stamps, so Gordon is going to call them.
Mm-hmm.
Then we go to the Batcave, and Robin makes several attempts to solve the anagram of the letters in the soup. So we get green lavender unicorns are more extraordinary than koala bears, especially on Friday. And excellent weather conditions in Batavia usually stain grass umbrellas pink. And then Gordon calls, as he does as Shot, but of course the dialogue is changed then because the stamps are intact. And actually, as Shot, Batman tells him he can tear them up. We don't actually see them getting torn up, of course.
Or you can put them on the walls of your bedroom next to your football posters.
Alfred tells Batman that Britt Reed has arrived, but as written, he says that Britt is talking with Mrs. Cooper. But as Shot, Batman asks Alfred to ask Mrs. Cooper to keep Britt occupied, but Alfred says she's under the hairdryer.
Yeah.
So the script has some chit-chat between Harriet and Britt that's, of course, gone. It's interesting, we don't even see Aunt Harriet in that whole section.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if she wasn't available or if this was a director who didn't like working with her, or...
Well, it could be. Yeah, maybe. I mean, that's not a bad theory, because the way that they've gotten her out of the scene via the hairdryer conceit, bugged me a little. That then Bruce says, it's female vanity that blew out our electricity and made the computer incapable of solving this problem, which seems like completely unfair, but.
Yeah.
But, it's like an extra put down of, Madge Blake / Aunt Harriet that's completely unnecessary. It's an unearned error.
The director was Robert Spar, by the way. I don't think he did many or any other episodes. I don't remember the name.
Yeah, I certainly don't either. Unforced error is what I meant to say.
So... Yeah, 53 to 55, the conversation between Britt and Bruce is mostly unchanged in Wayne Manor. Mm-hmm. And, I love how they keep subtly boosting their own respective alter egos and dissing the other one.
That's great.
But, with all the comparing of codpiece sizes, you'd think they'd each figure out the other's alter ego.
Seriously.
Which, as written, they almost do. But as shot, that whole secret identity thing really kind of disappears.
Yeah, there's, as I mentioned before, that exchange between Kato and Green Hornet about,
Bruce being defensive about
Bruce
Batman.
Being defensive, you're right.
Yeah, and Batman makes a comment about it to Robin, too, but yeah, both of those are gone. Mm-hmm. The only thing about secret identity in the final is others theorizing that ridiculously that Bruce is the Green Hornet and Britt is Batman.
Yes, that's pretty funny. That's Pinky's insight or misunderstanding. Although the whole problem with the Bat computer early on in episode 1 is that it's missing this dual identity capacitor, Bat capacitor or something like that. Mm-hmm. Apparently there's a special circuit that you have.
Or you can get at any hardware store.
Yeah, that you have to pop in to the opening in your motherboard. I know this is probably not. This is probably a different generation of electronics, but nevertheless, that seems to be why when they plug in even who are Batman and Robin, that the Bat computer just says their identity is unknown.
Then, another attempt at solving the riddle of the alphabet soup. Vivid larkspur is exceptional, but when the young dwarf gulped, ...
Why not look for words like gum? Larkspur? Oh, for Pete's sake.
Yeah, and then this is where Batman says, Robin asks what's bothering him, and he says, Britt Reed's attitude about the Green Hornet. He seems to know much more than might be suspected.
Mm-hmm.
And Robin says, well, you know more about Batman than most people do. And that's all gone. We just get back to the letters, and of course this is when they're dumped into the Batcomputer.
Mm-hmm.
The Batcomputer seems to get along well with pasta after it spit out spaghetti in the Sandman story.
Yeah, I guess it agrees with the digestive system of the Batcomputer now.
Is the Batcomputer Italian?
That's a species spicy meatball.
So then on 57, it's the scene that we see on screen, except there's a mention of that card that the Batcomputer spit out in part 1 about the location of Black Beauty. Robin says, look, it played a trump while we were gone. Batman, intent on the alphabetizing. One thing at a time, old chum. And yeah, he repeatedly just puts off Robin, which, I don't know, just doesn't quite seem in character.
Well, and it doesn't really seem in character for Robin to keep pressing the point either.
Well, that's true, too.
Batwing Hornet comments on this as well. On the Batman 66 message board, he also talks about this bit.
Batman's kind of concentrating on rescuing Pinky, and he says, Pinky Pinkston's safety is our primary concern, Robin, and Robin heatedly says, your primary concern maybe, but not mine. We're in this together, Batman. Caped Crusaders, plural, dynamic duo. That means the two of us, crime fighters, not lady killers. I don't know where the lady killers comes from. It's not like they're trying to pick her up or something.
Well, I think that's what Robin is insinuating, though.
He thinks that Batman is interested in more than someone's safety?
Yeah, holy innuendo indeed. So, Batwing Hornet's comment on this is that Hoffman should be, these are his words, quote, Hoffman should also be credited with delivering the most aggressively judgmental, and justifiably so, and detective-minded Robin scene of arguably the entire series. And then he talks about the scene that you just mentioned. First, it is Robin who comes up with the idea to ask the dual identity stumped Batcomputer for details about the Black Beauty and its whereabouts. Later, Robin chastises Batman for being too interested or focused on Pinky, seemingly drifting away from locating the Black Beauty and eventually its location at Rensky's rental garage. While Hoffman has Batman fall back to the all-too-familiar when you're older reply to Robin.
Holy Stanley Ralph Ross.
Yes. His intense version of Robin made the scene, showing Robin is every bit as interested in investigation as throwing punches. In the filmed episode, this entire scene, the emotional direction of the conversation is nowhere to be seen other than Robin noting that some of Bruce Wayne's female friends seem a little dizzy. A scene of that kind would have gone a long way in giving at least one of the series leads some sort of growth this far into the run. Wholly lost opportunity, end quote.
Interesting an idea. Characters actually growing on this show?
Yeah, by season 3, as we've often commented, there's no time even for them to characterize themselves, let alone grow, when there are so many people on screen.
Characters shrink in season 3, not grow.
They do indeed. So then in the original, on 62-63, this is the scene where both, and folks, if you haven't read the script, you really ought to have a look at these couple of pages. I don't think I could really reproduce just how weird they are, just even by reading them. But Robin is hammering at Batman to, look, Rensky's rental garage. And Robin says, it's trying to tell you something, Batman. But then the computer, every time Batman asks for information about Pinky, the Batcomputer, just like Robin, spits out yet again Rensky's rental garage.
Yeah, underlined the last time.
Yes, it's practically yelling at Batman just as Robin is, trying to, convince him. He's like, forget about Pinky. We gotta find a Green Lantern's car. Green Lantern, I just said. Yes, the Pink Chimp Green Lantern Factory.
By the way, I think we skipped over the fact that the hairdryer shorting out the electricity is only in the final. It's not in here.
Yes, that's right.
And 58, the mention of Apricot as a Maltese shows up in the final.
Mm-hmm.
Gordon, meanwhile, has called Batman on page 59, telling him that the Pink Chip Stamps factory has been abandoned, and he's terrified about the effect on the economy. Supermarkets closing by the thousands, and he blames himself. And he's being called by Mayor Linseed, Governor Stonefellow, and now, quote, Johnson City, unquote.
Yes, LBJ
is also referred to as.
LBJ is extremely concerned about the stamp market in Gotham City. Meanwhile, Joker's trying to corner the perfume market in Gotham City as his master plan.
Well, I mean, supposedly one trading stamp brand is like the whole national economy lives or dies by that. I'm sure, he was probably going for exaggeration for humor's sake, but it just comes off kind of weird.
Well, it does. I mean, we don't live in a trading stamp, decade or century any longer.
Right.
I do remember when trading stamps were, considered, you can get exciting things like toasters and blenders and, some household goods that you wouldn't normally have because you wouldn't bother to buy them because they're more like luxuries than necessities. That's how we got our first pair of headphones, sound design headphones. were bought with S&H Kelly green stamps by our mom. But I think, it's probably a bit of satire that would have landed a little better in 1967.
Yeah, I suppose so. Yeah, we got those headphones in 1980, and I think within less than 5 years of that, all the trading stamps were gone from all the supermarkets.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. I'm pretty sure Mom got her Oster blender in Centerville in the 70s. From via trading stamps as well.
That may be. I don't quite remember.
But I think there were jokes circulating, maybe in Mad Magazine in the 60s, or even the 50s, that trading stamps, could ostensibly replace currency, and then, the world would be all about trading stamps.
So it's kind of the 20th century equivalent of Bitcoin.
Yes, exactly. Just ask Matt Damon. He'll tell you all about it.
Now, the narration, so getting back to the conflict over priorities between Robin and the Batcomputer versus Batman, the narration on page 63 suggests that Robin and the Batcomputer may both be wrong, and the duo may be on a wild goose chase going to the wrong warehouse. So, but then we go to Pinky tied up in the warehouse, which is the same as broadcast. There's a cut section where Gum accuses Pinky of being a traitor because she seems to want Batman or the Hornet to go after him. If I'm understanding his argument correctly, I was a little confused by that bit.
Yeah, I mean, she's a traitor against him, I guess. Well, yeah, because he's now apparently taken over the factory, and since she's still connected with it, she's betraying the factory at this point if she goes against his wishes. But yeah, it's a little forced, but it does sound like insane supervillain, assumption. So maybe it's, but it is kind of confusing, just in context.
Okay, so then the topic of the Gotham Gothic comes up. And Gum is saying, it also happened that last night at the factory, the Green Hornet mentioned the same stamp and the same stamp dealer, Boris Severoff.
Right.
And Pinky asks Apricot, is he trying to tell me Bruce Wayne is the Green Hornet, Apricot? So this is all as shot.
Yeah.
What's written on page 65 is Gum goes ahead and tells her that he's Boris Severoff, and he's also the Englishman who, as far as we know, she never actually noticed in the hotel, who heard you make your arrangements in the cameo room. But that's all cut. Now, the line after that is reprint saying, "Don't spill any more beans, Colonel," and that's in the final version. It's just that some beans are deleted from the script.
I wonder if Hoffman wrote that into this part of the script in case, on set, the director and the cinematographer and maybe the editor, looking at pre-visualization in his mind, probably his, were thinking that in case the director decided to shoot some coverage in which Pinky notices what's going on with Gum and whatever disruption he's making, that could have been shot, and then this part of the script would have helped to kind of close off that opening, create an effect for that cause. I think they might have just been hedging. Hoffman might have been hedging his bets a little bit, depending on what the director thought would be appropriate for the tea room scene.
Yeah, and then the last thing Gum says before leaving the room is completely changed. He says in the script, "I'll leave you in your tiny triumph. The secret of Batman and the Green Hornet's true identities can be yours to reveal, yours alone." Where instead he says, "Vast fortune that shall make your pink chip stamp empire look like pink peanuts."
Kind of a funny line. Carmel delivers it pretty well, but I could not think of anything but a mixture of circus peanuts and styrofoam peanuts.
Yeah. Yeah, that's what I thought of too.
Both of which are made of styrofoam, in my opinion. You know what circus peanuts are, right? Those big kind of puffy, marshmallowy, peanut-shaped things. They're candy. We used to get them sometimes, I think, for Halloween or maybe even Easter. But anyway, they never tasted very good, although I would dutifully eat them.
Yeah, that falls in the category of candy I don't like. Candy corn also.
Yes, they were also often pink.
On 66, 67, and the top of 68, there's a whole scene that's cut of Batman and Robin at Renske's rental garage talking with Mr. Renske, who, in spite of living in Gotham City, has no idea who Batman and Robin are and thinks they're crazy.
That was weird.
Yes.
Never would have expected that to happen in a Hoffman script. Of course, he did write the Joker's Flying Saucer as well. All bets are off.
Then Batman says, this was a waste of time. Apparently Green Hornet's not planning to use the car tonight. He must be close to the action. A piece of the action? So I think we better head for the stamp exhibition in the Constellation Room. Robin, how are we going to get there? Bat ropes? Batman, of course. How else could we arrive unnoticed except climb up the outside wall of the hotel?
I so wish that line had stayed. But it's a bit too obvious, a kind of symbolism.
Mm-hmm.
It's the suggestion is that, what better way to, be secretive and surreptitious than to flash our costumes while we're crawling up the side of a wall.
Yeah, well, I mean, through the series and, of course, in the movie, too, there are mentions of bat climbs being the most inconspicuous way to get in or out of a building.
Right. But this might almost seem, just too overt, as though Batman and Robin knew somehow that they were, winking at the audience when they talked about the surreptitiousness or, the inconspicuousness of climbing up the side of a building, the outside of a building, and meeting Edward G. Robinson.
Right, yeah, a couple pages from now. Then we have Pinky at the GCPD. Mm-hmm. Mostly the same as what we saw on screen. Pinky has a cut line, but and there's a little bit changed around at the end, but it's basically the same scene. Then another conversation between, well, as designated here, Kato and Britt. I guess he's not wearing his mask in that scene. I think he's wearing the rest of his costume. Of course, Kato's secret identity is Kato.
Yeah.
It's the worst secret identity ever.
Yeah, and he wears exactly the same clothes when he's driving Britt around without the mask on as he does when he's Kato.
As with the previous one, it's all changed. Page 71. Interior Britt's hotel suite, night. Angle on Britt, once again being helped into his Green Hornet outfit by Kato, as in scene 62. Already dressed for night's action. Britt, however, looks thoughtful and sober. Kato. Something bothering you, Mr. Reed? You seemed so quiet all afternoon. Britt. Yes, Cato, something's bothering me. The strange defensive way Bruce Wayne spoke this morning in the living room at Wayne Manor. Cato, defensive? Britt nods. About Batman. Cato smiles. You'd be defensive about the Green Hornet, Mr. Reed. Britt, that's just what I mean, Cato. Abrupt. What's that? Cato, what? Britt, that noise outside the window. Another angle, moving with Cato to open window, looking out, reacting, and then looking back at Britt quickly. Cato, the dynamic duo coming up the wall. Angle in, Britt, now fully dressed as Hornet. Britt, close the window, quick. Cato does. Britt, and let's go. No use interrupting another bat climb. We'll be meeting them soon enough at the stamp exhibition, and perhaps other friends, adds pointedly, and enemies. They start out.
You seem thoughtful.
We're heading for another clash with the Caped Crusaders, and I don't like it.
Why not? We've never run away from trouble before.
Yes, but this double identity poses extra problems this time. We know they're heroic crime fighters. They think we're criminals. We must come out on top, but they mustn't suffer.
Kung Fu's Kung Fu. It's not child's play.
I know, but our tricks are going to have to be tempered with good judgment.
Yeah, and then, the Edward G. Robinson window cameo, which replaces a bit of dialogue that was dropped in for the bat climb. Robin saying, how do you like that? Slamming that window almost in my face. Just after that has happened. Batman, you know how some people are, old chum. Sleep with their windows closed and the lights on, afraid of the way the night is stamped with mystery. Stamped with mystery?
Well, of course, it's a stamp joke.
Right.
So.
And a weak one at that.
Yeah, it's not appropriate to that moment, but it is appropriate to the arc, sort of.
Yeah.
And suddenly a pink chimp bursts through the window.
Then we're in the Constellation Room, also known as the museum that Egghead robs.
Yes. Yeah, why couldn't a sign go up that says something like the slightly redressed museum that Egghead robbed in an earlier episode? That would be almost as funny as old abandoned warehouse and other such signs that are tacked up on hideouts in the show.
By the way, I meant to look and I didn't, but watching the end of part 1, where Batman and Robin are looking in those windows into the stamp factory, when Hornet and Cato are talking with Gum, I was wondering, is that the same set as with Penguin and Lola Lasagna? I remember a similar set in that one, in part 1.
Mm-hmm. And a similar shot of Batman and Robin looking in the window?
Possibly. Mm-hmm. I know those windows look really familiar.
Kind of rings a bell, yeah.
Yeah, about the Renske garage scene, Batwinged Hornet said, speaking of lost opportunity in universe, the investigation actually pays off. If ever the dynamic duo came so close to solving one of, if not their biggest case, it was during the Renske's garage scene, where they set sights on the Black Beauty. The what the moment comes when Batman only concludes Green Hornet did not need the car or will be near the action, but Hoffman did not have the duo think to lift fingerprints from the car.
Yeah, no wonder that scene was cut. No wonder the whole business of finding the Black Beauty was cut out of the episode.
But he says, I guess I will give Hoffman a break with that one, since getting prints would pretty much mean the end of the Green Hornet and Cato's crime-fighting careers. Or perhaps there would be no prints, since the Green Hornet and Cato only used the car while in full costume, gloves included.
True. Yes, good point. Well, I have a question to pose to you, Tim, about how Green Hornet and Cato come off in this episode, but we'll wait until we're finished with the script, because this has got to do more with just the idea of having a crossover and how they handled it, handled the characters in a crossover like this.
So page 74 at the stamp exhibition, Mr. Stample...
Lorenzo Stample Sr.
Yeah. Introduces a famous Egyptian stamp, but in the script it's the Sphinx, spelled with a Y, which was supposed to be a misprint, and that's why it's valuable. But as broadcast, it's the inverted blue Nile. And I wondered if maybe the Sphinx bit, as written, it doesn't work unless you have a close-up of the stamp so that we can see it has a Y in it, because the dialogue doesn't mention that.
Right.
So maybe they thought inverted blue Nile was easier to understand.
Yeah, even though probably, non-stamp collectors wouldn't be able to make much sense of that either, although it sounds as though they're talking about the kind of thing that happened with that John Buscema issue of FF, like 115 or 120 something, where thing was, I think it was a Buscema issue, maybe it was a Kirby issue from, before 100, but either way, there's a kind of infamous cover in which some of the colors got reversed. And the thing is green instead of orange. And then they recalled, the printer recalled it, and they were reprinted in the correct colors. But the green thing issues are more, valuable to collectors than the normal colored version because it's, much rarer. So I think what they're talking about is that kind of inversion where, the Nile and the surroundings are inverted so that the Nile is the wrong color or something compared to other versions of the stamp.
Mm-hmm. Then we have the fight. This is page 75, where Cato and Robin's lines that start with "It's a good thing" are not here. Those were added later. Mm-hmm. Batwing Hornet says about this section, "The big fight's description was interesting. Unlike the filmed episode, the two teams seemed to ignore Gum and his men to carry out their vendetta with each other, as if it was a fight a long time in coming. I would have loved to see the episode take that emotional direction, as it would have raised the stakes with each team member having something to prove to himself, rather than Batman and Robin simply seeing Green Hornet and Cato as part of the criminal crowd they had to defeat."
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean, of course, we do get them, the Mexican standoff, as Dozier says, but that kind of comes later in the fight.
Yeah. That's in the last part of the fight. Robin fights Cato and Batman fights Green Hornet pretty close to exclusively, whereas before, punches are getting thrown at, every which way.
Yeah, and then, the fight is quite different because in the script, Gum and his men don't go out the window and come around behind Pinky.
Mm-hmm.
Instead, Gum and his men go right out the main entrance. Mm-hmm. And Batman says, "Why are we fighting each other? There goes our target." And everybody leaps toward him. And just then, Pinky and the GCPD come in and says there is enough of an impasse to permit Hornet and Cato and Batman and Robin to rush in.
Mm-hmm.
So, Green Hornet and Cato don't leave, as they do in the final version. Instead, Pinky... So apparently Gum is supposed to be wearing some kind of a disguise, the script says fake mustache or whatever, and she tears that off rather than being having a gun held to her head. She's taking him on.
Mm-hmm.
Batman and the Hornet demand to know where the Gotham Gothic is, which is a question that's never answered as shot.
Yes.
And Gum says he accidentally used it to mail a letter quite a while ago.
That's kind of funny, and it's a shame that it didn't persist into the shot version.
Yeah.
However, it's not all that distracting for it to be gone because, as long as Gum is caught, the show is over, and we could leave. I think as an audience, it's kind of okay for us to not know what happened to that stamp.
Yeah, well, I don't think it occurred to us when we did our episode on this one.
No, Sometimes threads like that just, get left untied because some larger rope got tied, and the missing stamp would get, covered under the plot point of Gum getting captured.
Gordon and O'Hara go to unmask the Hornet, saying, "We're a little disappointed in you, Mr. Wayne," but he's gone. And then they start to accuse Batman of being the Green Hornet, but he's also gone.
Mm-hmm.
And Pinky says, "Well, Apricot, we'll never know, will we? We'll never know." And then There is a tag scene in the cameo room, but it's quite different. Bruce doesn't go to a payphone and call Pinky as Batman. Bruce and Britt start to admit to each other, "For a moment, I thought you might be... ...
Mm-hmm. Me too, Bruce, says Britt. I was getting a little suspicious you might be... ...
Mm-hmm.
But then lingerie models show up and everybody forgets what they were talking about.
Right, so this too breaks off as Shirley and June, the two lovely models seen earlier in their diaphanous lingerie, float past them and out in opposite directions. Britt, quickly. "Say goodbye to Mrs. Cooper and Dick, Bruce." Bruce, "Right, have a nice trip home." And as Britt follows his model out in one direction and Bruce follows his out in another, fade out. The end.
Mm-hmm. Yes, like I said, they're making bedroom eyes and wearing bedroom clothes, and now the script even describes them, although it's only the narrator, of the script. It's not said out loud, but they're described as, Britt's model and Bruce's model. It's like, I wonder what that means.
And Batwing Hornet says it's a scene that would have made Connery's James Bond raise his glass in tribute/admiration.
No doubt. Yeah, that's a little risque for this show. In fact, it's a lot risque for this show. To suggest what Batwing Hornet calls, the apparent one-night stand that's about to happen.
Yeah, he went into some detail about, so this was maybe not okay, but Bruce visiting Lisa Carson's hotel room in the next arc was okay.
Mm-hmm. Right. I think Batwing Hornet thought, I don't have it in front of me, his...
yeah, it's right. I got it right here. I'm assuming the Greenway PTB did not want to suggest that Bruce and Britt were going to get it on with models in a love 'em and leave 'em kind of way. But just one arc finale later, Batman's Waterloo, Bruce says man cannot live by crime fighting alone as he accepts Lisa Carson's invite into her apartment for milk and cookies.
You have to do milk shots for the rest of the evening.
Not that anyone can understand the galaxy-spanning reasoning of the Greenway PTB, but one can conclude they considered the Lisa Carson ending more acceptable since Wayne and Lisa were romantically involved throughout the Tut arc and had a, quote, seal of approval, unquote, from her father, John E. Carson, when he admitted he hoped Wayne and his daughter would become a permanent item. So Bruce's going into Lisa's apartment to get busy was not as much of a lecherous move as walking off into the night with a sexy model. 1960s logic?
Yes. Well, they're practically married already, so why not?
Of course, we'll never see her again, but
yes, exactly. Except as Catwoman, but we've already seen her as Catwoman.
Yeah, that's already happened.
The movie has already taken place.
Yeah.
Well, so here's my question. It's more about Green Hornet and Kato and the crossover itself. Does it make sense to you or our listeners that Green Hornet and Kato are villains as far as Batman and Robin are concerned, rather than, giving their secret away to Batman and Robin so that they can fight in tandem, so they can take on Gum and the counterfeit stamp ring together? And, maybe that would spoil the mystique of the Green Hornet, but the problem with this, practically speaking, is what if the audience didn't catch on that Green Hornet and Kato were actually good guys? Or if they didn't understand why Batman and Robin were fighting them because they didn't know that they were pretending to be bad guys. There's all kinds of information about that, but it's kind of scattered through the two episodes. Mm-hmm. Gordon mentions it, I think, early on, or at least he's nervous about them and worried that they're coming to Gotham City. Mm-hmm. But yeah, I don't know. I would like to see this kind of work better than it does in those terms, but on the other hand, it makes sense to me, just in terms of the characterizations of Green Hornet and Kato, that they would want to keep their identities to themselves so they can protect their ability to work in the underworld. Mm-hmm. But telling Batman and Robin would maybe not be such a big loss. It might actually be useful to them, not just in this caper, but in future operations.
Yeah, I don't know. I remember watching this as a kid and being frustrated that Batman didn't know that the Green Hornet was a good guy.
Mm-hmm.
And it's kind of an interesting way to do it, but it doesn't... you want it to be more of a team-up.
I do, yeah.
Rather than a kind of unwitting team-up on Batman's part.
I know this is a favorite arc of a lot of people, including some of our listeners.
I think Batwing Hornet said it was one of his favorites.
Yeah, exactly. And I've heard others say that as well. But, maybe the problem is that I just wasn't as in and still am not as into the vibe of the Green Hornet as I am the vibe of Batman, because I've only seen maybe 3 or 4 episodes of the Green Hornet. Squinting into the the terrible video recordings that we've seen on YouTube, various episodes, trying to see through the televisual slush.
The day as night scenes. Ugh.
Yeah, day for nights. Let's just put a blue filter on the camera and the lens, and everything will look just like it's pitch black out.
Just close your eyes. Oh, it's night.
Yeah, except it's like this super light blue. I just watched The Searchers again, the John Wayne Western, the John Ford film from 1956, and there's a bunch of day for night scenes where you can tell that it's basically daylight, just shaded blue, when there's supposed to be a night raid on the Comanche camp.
Yeah, the problem with the ones on the Green Hornet is you can't tell what the heck is going on.
If the resolution were higher and there weren't so much static, I think we could.
I don't know. It's been a while since I watched it, but it seems like the video versions I saw were not that bad picture quality-wise, but yeah, I was like, I don't know what's going on.
Right. So,
and there's so much of it in some of the episodes.
So to our listeners, please drop us a line, whether on the 66 Batman message board or email to Tim or onto the blog. Let us know what you think about this characterization of Green Hornet and Kato, not just having to do with the script, but just the fact that they cross over and don't reveal their secret to Batman and Robin don't figure it out, which also seems, equally unlikely, I guess, in the Batman 66 universe. So, but your opinions would be welcomed. I would like to be convinced that this was the right way to do it, but I'm not entirely sure that it is in terms of either Batman's character or the kind of success of this arc.
Salwete. My name is Stella, and I am the host of Batgirl to Oracle, the Barbara Gordon podcast. Batgirl to Oracle is a podcast dedicated to Barbara Gordon, the first woman to hold the mantle of Batgirl for an extended period of time, roughly 1967 to 1988. The goal of Batgirl to Oracle is to examine the character's history from her first appearance as Batgirl and continuing through her tenure as Oracle. Each episode looks at a vintage issue of Detective Comics or Batman, as well as other books like Justice League and Freedom Fighters, and modern issues of Batgirl and Birds of Prey. I also keep track of news involving Batgirl and other members of the Bat family, and I have a revolving series of segments like Babs in the Tube, which highlights appearances of Babs in TV and film, Shipper Spotlight, which looks at a variety of comic and pop culture couples, gives their history, and determines whether they are hot or not, Reading with Stella, which could be described as an audio drama, or just me reading a book that relates to Babs or doesn't, and of course, the mainstay literature recommendation. I have been blessed to interview writers Scott Beatty and Chuck Dixon on their Batgirl Year 1 work, Brian Q. Miller on his Batgirl run, Dwayne Swarzynski and Christy Marks on their separate Birds of Prey work, and the creators and actors of the Batgirl Spoiled, the web series. I hope to interview more creators and actors in the future. My goal, most importantly, is to make a fun, entertaining, and thoughtful show that people enjoy and from which they learn. Find the show online at thebatmanuniverse.net and iTunes, and follow the show on Facebook and Twitter at Batgirl to Oracle. Thank you, and fly on, Babs lovers.
Coming up, more of Adam West and Burt Ward on The Merv Griffin Show on September 1st, 1966, and we read your mail in the Bat Inbox. This show is listener-supported through Patreon. Join us for $2 a month and get access to outtakes from every To the Bat Polls episode, trivia quiz videos on 20th century entertainment, and the right to vote on future Bat Polls topics. For a $4 monthly donation, you also get the right to have an ad for your own project on the show once a month, and hours of exclusive podcasts, including our monthly issue-by-issue walk through the early years of The Amazing Spider-Man. So go to patreon.com/deconcomics and select the level of your monthly donation. Thanks for listening, and thanks for your support.
Do you get funny fan mail?
Yes, one lady wrote me, speaking of this, as a matter of fact. Gee, I'm glad you asked that. A woman wrote me and told me that she was potty training her baby.
On a back pop?
Yes, if the baby didn't, then she'd say, Batman is going to get you, kid. And
Batman's good. Why does she...
Well, I think it's probably, it's kind of the syndrome that Batman will disapprove.
Oh, I see.
Oh, but think when she grows up, what she's going to have.
I know, and I'm looking forward to it. Imagine what would happen if I ever met her when she's 18 or 19.
Do you get funny ones?
Oh, gee, I got a great one. I even made a record out of it.
I know, I've heard it. Hasn't come out yet, so don't tell the whole thing.
No, but...
You get a lot of funny ones?
Oh, yes, all the time. They're just unbelievable. Every time you open it up, you got to be prepared for a shock.
Yeah. Very exciting. Look what you guys have started, though. Now, this year, besides Batman, of course, which is the original, we're going to get Green Hornet.
Yes.
And what else?
Yes.
I think Wonder Woman.
Wonder Woman.
Right.
What was that with?
And Superboy in a comic strip style.
And Superman is coming back in cartoons.
Right. So, we're going to get flooded.
Oh, you mean that's the new trend on television?
Oh, yeah. You got to be a superhero.
I'm looking forward to Plastic Man.
Starting in October, Arthur and I are going to start wearing costumes on the show.
Yes?
The Odd Couple. We'll be right back.
Bat Inbox. First of all, we have a tidbit from the all-seeing, all-knowing 66 Batman message board. You're not going to do it.
Well, oh yeah, that. And one of the bits of our program that we've kind of been forgetting to do lately.
Well, yeah, I've mentioned the 66 message board a lot, but I haven't called it the all-seeing, all-knowing 66 Batman message board.
No,
I've called it by something, some other moniker, or just chopped off the all-seeing, all-knowing.
Well, I think the lack of mail has been part of the reason.
Yeah. Without our dear departed friend High C sparking the conversations as he often did, the email's a little more sparse. But
not this time.
Not this time, no.
There was quite a bit of feedback on Madge Blake, our Madge Blake episode.
Yes, and that's good news. I'm glad that she is not so obscure as we were afraid she would be when thinking about response. But obscure or not, it was just it was time. So let's start with I think this is the post from Batwinged Hornet.
Right. Yeah, so Hornet says, guys, I have to thank you for doing the impossible, making an episode on Madge Blake interesting. I was aware of her work pre-Batman, but for someone who made the rounds obtaining roles, there's such a massive lack of information about her, almost as if there was a conscious effort to never expose too much of her background to the public. Paul wondered if there was genderism and or ageism in the treatment of Blake on the Batman set. Well, it could have been the case when comparing West's story about Blake to the way other older actresses such as Agnes Andorra Moorhead, born in 1900, or Marion Aunt Clara Lorne, born in 1883, were not mistreated on the sets of Bewitched, could lead one to think the negative treatment was a problem on the Batman set, or Greenway Productions overall, not so much a trend of the times. Your research revealed Blake studied at the Pasadena Playhouse, and if one considers others who studied there, you could place 6 degrees of the Dozierverse. Barbara Rush, Nora Clavicle, Meg Wiley, Grandma in Black Widow Strikes Again, Mako, Lo Sing in the Praying Mantis episode of the Green Hornet, Carolyn Jones, Marcia, Max Hodge, screenwriter of the first 2 Mr. Freeze arcs, a.k.a. the Sanders and Preminger arcs, Werner Klemperer, Colonel Klink window cameo. I suspect there are other artists from the Dozierverse who attended the Playhouse, but this is a good start. Finally, I suppose the entire Madge Blake Aunt Harriet situation and its influence on Batman media was to be short-lived. Harriet vanished from the comics, and it's telling that the first post-66 Batman adaptations, Filmation's The Batman-Superman Hour of 1968 and Batman with Robin the Boy Wonder 1969, did not use the character at all, almost as if to make a final statement that her presence served no real purpose in the Batman universe. Or maybe that they thought she was boring to kids, I don't know. Or they just didn't have time for another character, because there's no use in introducing her if she's going to be on for 10 seconds an episode.
Right. Yeah. One could argue that it's easier to, put a character into an animated show than it is to, hire an actors' equity member, and, everything else you would need to do to put, even a 1 minute cameo per episode in of Aunt Harriet. I have one comment on Green Hornet's comment about genderism and or ageism. I totally take the point that Agnes Moorehead and Marion Lorne were not mistreated on the sets of Bewitched, although I'd be really interested in finding out more about what your source is on that, Batwing Hornet. It's probably available on the internet, but I'm just interested in whose recollections you're talking about there. But, both Agnes Moorehead and Marion Lorne were, Marion Lorne first stepped on a Broadway stage, I think, in 1905. So, she had been, she was a seasoned, long-standing kind of, actor hero to many. And the same goes for Agnes Moorehead, who was in Orson Welles' Mercury Theater of the Air, as well as his one of the Mercury players in several of his films, including Citizen Kane and especially in Magnificent Amberson, where she had a major role. And she was, considered the creme de la creme of character actors for, her entire career. So there, here are actors who have a lot more clout than Madge Blake did, and also a lot more support, and would probably just look, complete. I'm not saying that anybody on the Bewitched set was simply looking around for women to mistreat. But if there is a structural kind of, pecking order on a set, it's usually, the male stars who get most of the attention and the support. But in this case, I'm not suggesting that just because these actors were better known and more respected, that they might have been treated better on the Bewitched set than Madge Blake was on the Greenway set. But I think it's worth considering that if all other things were equal, then the Bewitched crew would treat these two women more respectfully than the directors, especially, seem to have treated Madge Blake over at Greenway.
Okay, so there are 3 short ones here that I've colored green for you to read.
Okay. Yes, and Tim used crayon, so I would be familiar with the green color. Andy Fish writes, very briefly, "We can all be thankful they never thought to dress her up as Batgirl at some point in season 3. That's really funny. So, Alfred would be dressed as Batman, and, she would be Batgirl and next to him, and they would both put their hands on their hips. I would love that. I'm not sure I'm thankful that didn't happen at all, Andy. I would be thankful if it had. It would have spiced up season 3 a little bit more. And if they tried to play it seriously / campy, it could have been kind of amazing. But definitely not season 1 Batman. And Batwing Hornet writes, "Now that you've triggered a visual, a population mind wipe is required ASAP." Very nice. Let's see, JWLJN, not familiar with that acronym, but that's perhaps the first note we've gotten from this person?
That I can remember.
Or this was on the message board as well?
Message board, yes.
Yeah, somehow I missed that. Strange. So Maudy Prickett, JWLJN writes, "Maudy Prickett, best remembered as Rosie on Hazel, was intended to be part of the Dozierverse. She was Wonder Woman's mother in the pilot film. Oh, yes. Not only was she an actress at the Pasadena Playhouse, but was married to its co-founder and worked hard to keep it afloat until her death. Good to see Madge getting some respectful discussion, for the most part, on these boards for once." Nice. Now over to emails.
Yeah, email from Chris Cavanaugh. There are a lot of links in this. Maybe I'll put these in the show notes. You misspoke when you said Alfred returned in Detective 356 before the show's debut. That issue was on the newsstand late in August 1966.
Oh, yes, you're right. Sorry about that. That was my faux pas.
Well, yeah, you said you had forgotten that the show debuted in January rather than September.
That's right. At that point, I was just thinking about shows, television series, and I'm thinking, that's August, September is usually the premiere date.
Even so, given publishing lead times, DC had to hustle to get the comics in sync with the show. I checked YouTube, hoping I'd find the full Lucy episode with Superman. I didn't. To one-up another kid's birthday party, Lucy promises little Ricky that Superman will be at his birthday party. But when Lucy gets antsy because it doesn't look like Superman's coming, she comically dresses as Superman. Below are a few videos of interest that I came across during my search. In the episode, Madge Blake plays a potential tenant looking at the apartment Fred and Ethel have for rent, with a Batman clip attached, I guess in the same video. I haven't actually watched it. Here's the episode's climax. It's hilarious. Another link. On Leave It to Beaver, Mrs. Mondello was the mother of Beaver's friend. He had written Lumpy, then we figured out it was Larry. Beaver's friend Larry Mondello.
Right, because Lumpy is one of Tony Dow's character's friends. Okay, is this our last one? Yeah, I guess so.
Two here from our own blog, tothebatpulse.libsyn.com.
Okay, one from Jim Aiken. Hi, Jim. That Jack Benny clip is a hoot.
He's talking about the video that I put in the show notes of the Madge Blake episode.
Oh, right. Yes, when she was supposedly the president of his fan club, the California...
Yeah, the Pasadena branch.
Right, so that Jack Benny clip is a hoot. I won't have a chance to hear the podcast until after the long Labor Day weekend, so I don't know if you guys commented on this, but Madge Blake's fan club vice president, quote, Emma, end quote, has a Batman connection too. She's played by Jessalyn Fax, who portrayed Bon Bon of Bon Bon's Box Boutique, the first victim of Mad Hatter's super instant mesmerizer in the Contaminated Cowl episodes. Now that's something to put on the resume. Underline, highlight. According to IMDb, Jim goes on, there's another episode of the Jack Benny program in which Jack attends a fan club meeting in Pasadena and meets many other members. I don't think the clip above mentions the name of Blake's club president character, but IMDb says it's Clara. And final note / post to the blog from Steve Small. Any information as to why Madge Blake didn't have a more prominent role in the Batman feature film? After listening to the podcast, I think I understand. She was possibly ill. She got nervous when the cameras began to roll, which caused problems with crew. Maybe Ben Bentley knows the answer. Yes, that's very possible.
Yeah, that film crossed my mind when we were putting the episode together, but I didn't really think to look into that. I'm not sure where I would look anyway. I mean, she was ill certainly during season 3, and so she hardly appeared. But, yeah, I don't know that would... I mean, she seemed okay during season 2 after the film, so sure. I doubt if it was an issue of her health, but what it was, I don't know.
Yeah. Just, it is kind of a shame to think that she doesn't have more to do in the film. I mean, she does appear in the film.
She appears, she has no lines.
Right.
It's just, that bit where Bruce and Dick drive up in the sports car, the one time we ever see characters standing in front of Wayne Manor, and right. Alfred and Aunt Harriet are outdoors, and she, waves or something, and then we never see her again.
Right. Just imagine the Madge Blake, Aunt Harriet subplot we could have had, Madge Blake's, triumph over her Valium addiction. I mean, Aunt Harriet's, not Madge Blake's.
We didn't get to that in the episode.
No. I am not trying to slander Madge Blake, but, to give her some kind of arc within the film might have been fun, and there would have been a little more time for it, but it also probably would have been distracting from what every 9-year-old in the audience really wanted to see, which would be Batman and Robin beating people up. And driving the Batmobile and all of the other cool Bat gadgets and vehicles that they'd cooked up for the film.
Batboat, the Batcopter. Yeah.
The stock footage. I mean...
well, soon to be stock footage.
Right, yeah. Maybe if they'd called the film a tax write-off because they used it to produce stock footage for the series, then they would have ended up doing a little better on the movie, at least financially, if not in terms of fan interest.
So you can write to us at batpoles@deconstructingcomics.com or via the 66batman.com message board thread on this episode, or comment on our blog at tothebatpoles.libsyn.com. And next time we'll return to the Batman 66 comic book, covering issue 11, The Joker's Big Show, which I think it's the first time the whole issue is one story. And in addition to the Joker, who looks very Romero-esque, we've got Catwoman, who is clearly based on Julie Newmar. So that's interesting seeing her with Caesar, which we never got to see in live action. And Batgirl is also in it. So, she never met Julie Newmar Catwoman either.
Holy anachronism.
So we'll be doing that here in 2 weeks here at the same Bat RSS feed. Check the show notes for the L'Orchestra Cinématique version of the theme and the links from Chris Cavanaugh. Thanks to David Maska for the Merv Griffin show clip you heard in this episode. If you have any interesting Bat audio to pass on, or you'd like to make a donation to the show through PayPal, or you just want to drop us a line, the address is batpoles@deconstructingcomics.com. You can also comment on the thread for each episode and each script at 66batman.com/forums, or on our blog at tothebatpoles.libsyn.com. We're on Twitter at Decon Comics and on the Deconstructing Comics channel on YouTube. You can hear outtakes from this and every episode of To the Batpoles and vote for topics for future episodes by supporting us at patreon.com/deconcomics. You can also help us out by shopping via deconstructingcomics.com/Amazon, by sharing our episodes on your social media, and by subscribing to the show on Apple Podcasts or wherever you listen. And spread the word. Let all your friends who are Batman 66 fans know about the show. Next time, the 11th issue of the Batman 66 comic book series, The Joker's Big Show. See you then. To the Batpoles is a production of DeconstructingComics.com.